Okay, on this episode, we look at 6 shots from The Expanse. First, a very clever reaction shot. Then we look at 2 depth parallax shots, one of which has some problems. And then we look at 3 super simple, super classy visual storytelling techniques. This is Hot Moves. Okay, so the first shot is a kind of a reframe reaction shot that I think that they arrived at by accident, because it's an unusual mashup of 2 techniques that don't naturally go together. But the result totally works, so maybe this technique should actually have a name of its own. So let's look at the shot. We're looking at the exit that's coming up like right about after this edit, after the next edit.
Change places with you. I know I would.
So this is actually a mix of 2 techniques that each are completely common. And the first is that he exits the frame and we reframe to the other side. And then the other half is that we track onto her eyeline, which is also separately an interesting reaction shot, but I've just never seen them together. Okay, so let's cover the techniques separately. So the first is that he walks out and we're starting in the over the shoulder on him. He walks out. You can see the camera is moving a little bit and now it's a reframe. So now he's on the other side. He's to the right of her now in the frame. And so just to isolate the technique from how they did it in this shot. So here's an alternate where he walks out behind her. And I just want to see if we can get the same thing. So he walks out, maybe even bumps her shoulder on the way out. It's not that kind of scene, but it could be. And then this camera here is panning. So now he's on the other side of her. So this is a super easy reframe to get, which makes you wonder why you don't see it all the time and why we ourselves don't do it all the time. Okay, so the second half is tracking into the eyeline. So first he walks out, this camera is reframing, so now she's on the other side. I've broken this up into 2 steps, even though they actually kind of crossfade into each other. Because now this camera here then starts tracking into her eyeline, and she turns a little bit towards the camera as well to help with the move. So this is why I think that these are a weird mix, because the first half of it is basically trying to get him over to the right side, but then the second half works against it, because as soon as we do this, he starts moving back to this side of the camera here again. So the 2 techniques are actually kind of fighting each other. And this is why I thought that they ended up here by accident, that probably they just wanted to do a track into the eyeline, and then somebody got an idea, hey, he's walking out there, let's reframe over there. And so they did these 2 kind of a little bit contradictory ideas at the same time. And again, we're in the over the shoulder on her. And in just a moment, we're in the over the shoulder on Holden. And then he walks out, reframe him to the right side of the frame. And then we track into the eyeline, which kind of works in the opposite direction. Yeah, but I like it. It's good stuff. And super easy to do. Okay, next let's look at some depth parallax. And I want to play you the shot without any explanation, and then you tell me what you notice.
I've been looking for you. I checked every bar on the station.
So that's 2 parallax reveals in a row, which is almost like kind of a parallax joke for the extremely nerdy. Because doing it twice, I mean, that's like, look at me, I can do parallax. So the lesson is always that you really, really need things in the foreground, especially for like Z movements, for in and out movements, because basically our depth perception is in the toilet. We're just not picking up any sense of movement until we pull back past something here. And this is why almost every drone move that goes over a mountain ridge basically cuts out as soon as we pass over the mountain ridge. Because then at that point, there's no sense of movement and then we're just dangling there suddenly. It almost feels like we stop. And this is why I thought this other establishing shot from The Expanse was weird. So tell me what you notice in this shot. So there's a tower in the foreground, and now I'm going to press play. So what's happening at the end? So that is strange. It's kind of dangling there where everybody else would have cut out. So I'm thinking that this visual effect actually came in late in the production process, and the episode had already been scored and edited and sound mixed and all that. And then you drop in the shot and, oh my God, it's too long. But the reality is it happens. I've done things where I didn't realize major mistakes until it was already on TV. But this would actually have been an easy fix. Just put an antenna into the 3D project, render it out separately, dump it on the timeline, and it's fixed. But anyway. Alright, next let's run over a couple of small techniques that I thought were nice. The first is to simply have people walk into a fixed focus.
Excuse me. Are you all right?
So in this scene, Clarissa is a bit dazed and confused, and maybe that's how the director got the idea. But just this visual language is kind of dreamy and very interesting. I wish I got ideas like this, but it's just somehow not in my DNA. And I mean, obviously I understand everything about how it's done, but when I'm in a situation where this would work, this is just not the kind of ideas that I get. So I'm actually kind of making camera work videos to remember techniques, so one day maybe this is the idea that pops into my head. Okay, the next technique is craning up from behind something, and the typical way that you see this kind of technique is actually that you track out from behind something, like from behind a wall. And this is the same thing, just vertically. And I'm showing it just from one edit before because I think that the edit before is actually an important part of how this works. So let's just play it. So we're somewhere completely different, and then the edit comes here. So it's this one just craning up from behind something. That might just as well have been a wall that we came out from behind. So I'm showing from the clip before because I think that the feeling you get from these is like a clean break because it breaks the continuity completely with what came before and we kind of go in fresh like it's just a brand new topic here. And finally, an interesting technique is to look for a frame within the frame. And usually this is about framing people in doorways or in gaps in the foreground. So this one's actually almost funny. So notice a guy in the foreground. So he talks to drummer, and then when she responds, it's framed through the hole in the foreground, which is kind of clever. So I can't tell what feeling comes from this, but maybe it focuses it more.
The ghost knife himself.
Ashford had one ship. We have 3.
And this is again something that's not my natural intuition, so I'm actually kind of making videos like this to help myself remember them. So anyway, I hope you thought that was interesting, and I'll see you in the next video.